D'Angelo Russell to begin the season has caught criticism from even the Lakers head coach himself, JJ Reddick, for his lack of compete, just kind of questioning his motor and desire to really be an effective basketball player. And D'Angelo, he consistently gets off to slow starts to NBA seasons. This is nothing out of the norm for him. However, for that to go back to his work ethic, that's something new that really hasn't been brought up before. And I think it's just kind of a reflection of the disappointing career of D'Angelo Russell relative to the talent that he has, especially as an offensive player. Because his career has just been marred by inconsistencies and that lack of a high motor. We've seen what an effective player he can be back in his Brooklyn days, although that's a long time ago now. And then his stint with the Golden State Warriors, he was a really good when he was on Golden State. And it was ultimately just because they wanted to stick with Clay and Steph Curry, and that's no fault of D'Lo, but he did really well in Golden State. He was an all-star in Brooklyn. And so when D'Lo is on, he is one of the most talented offensive players in the entire league. However, he is not on a lot of the time for a variety of reasons. And what's been coming up recently is his lack of compete and lack of doing what it takes to be a valuable contributing NBA player. And that's coming from, the Lakers head coach, JJ Reddick himself. Now, once again, he does usually go off to slow starts, but the issue with that is because, oftentimes you can have a star that might have an off game or two. The issue when it comes to D'Lo is he does not make up for that on the defensive end whatsoever. At the point guard position, which is, typically a position that, for the most part, doesn't even have the best defenders to begin with. At that position, he's still among the worst defenders at the point guard spot. And that, that is saying something. And so when you're not able to contribute as a basketball player defensively or offensively, you're just being in that negative on the court. And so that's where the inconsistency comes in, because at the bare minimum, if he could make up for it on the offensive end, then that would take a lot of the attention off from the way that he has struggled as a defender. However, D'Lo is also not the most consistent offensive player either. He'll have a good game. He might go off for 27 in the fourth quarter in OT like he did back when he was in Minnesota sometimes. However, for the most part, what you get from him on offense, while it averages out over a season to be pretty solid, it's either going to be 13 points or it's going to be about 24. And 24 is not bad in itself, but when that's, really the high that you're typically getting to, maybe 27, and you don't have... He used to have 50 pieces. You don't have a 50 piece now even to really justify the lows. And as a result, you don't have this explosion of a game to make up for all the times you scored 13. You might have a 27-point performance to get back on track with your season average. But in general, you don't make up for all the games where you were off and you were inefficient. And for D'Angelo Russell, he is one of my favorite point guards in the entire league. However, it's just been so frustrating to watch his career because the talent is there for sure. But there is that lack of compete, as JJ Reddick mentioned, and it's just so many inconsistencies with D'Lo. And so at some points, the offense can't make up for the lack of offense in other games, and especially for the lack of defense. And D'Lo, he has a lot to work on if he wants to really continue his NBA career, because the archetype that he is, he's not really going to be a great role player. He really needs to be a top 3 option to be a valuable player. However, the way that he's playing right now, especially just not being great on the defensive end and dealing with inefficiencies on offense a lot of the time, he really doesn't serve well in that role either, especially to start the season for the Lakers. I hope D'Lo's able to get things back on track, but it has been a rough start to the season for D'Angelo Russell. And what has otherwise been a pretty good start for them, sure they have a middling record, but Anthony Davis is playing elite. LeBron James is really good in the last couple games, and JJ Reddick seems to be at the very bare minimum a passionate head coach who has a good mind for the game. D'Lo is really the X factor here if he can get things back on track for them. That's going to be a real deciding factor for the Los Angeles Lakers, whether it's going to the trade deadline and they're able to move on from him and get another asset, or whether that's sticking with him. He needs to get things back on track. D'Angelo Russell is truly the X factor for the Lakers, and they need him to perform better.